I lived a day as a child because there are things that children experience every day that adults do not notice. Their struggles, their pressures, their quiet fears in very real places. And the purpose of doing this is just making the invisible visible. Because the pattern we ignore in childhood, they become the very thing which we struggle when we become the adult. And because children deserve respect, kindness, and patience, not just correction. They deserve understanding and not just instructions. When I say I lived a day as a child, it means I tried to remove the lens of adult authority and tried to experience the world and life through a child's perspective. How they see themselves in the world, how they see the adults, and also how they see the authority. This is not about blaming the parents. It is also not about creating a narrative that adults are bad. This is about understanding how it feels like to live from the below, without power, without control, and without a nervous system which is just forming. So here are the reflections. These are the messages which I believe children receive long before they have a language to explain it. Number 8, it really hit me hard. So let's begin. Message number 1, expectations versus the reality. From the outside, childhood really looks simple. Play, school, friends, sleep, snack. But when I tried to experience life as a child, something really shifted. Childhood, it is not just about growing. It is about adapting. A child's first job is not to learn. It is about to understand one simple question. Am I safe here? Safe with my emotions, safe when I make mistakes, safe when I'm slow, safe when I don't understand, safe when I'm not perfect. And when safety is missing, a child does not protest maybe, but they just adjust. They become quieter, they become easy, they become hyper aware of the tone and the mood. They become the version that gets approval. And that's where many of adult struggles begin. The second message is the world from the floor. When I imagined living life without authority, without power, and without control, one thing became very obvious. The world feels very big. Too many voices, they all feel very loud. Too many corrections, they all feel heavier. Disapprovals, they feel super sharp. Children do not understand life through explanations. They understand it through energy. An adult can say, I'm not angry, but the child can feel the tension. An adult might say, it's not a big deal, but what the child learns is that my feelings are too much. A child does not have an adult language, but their nervous system records everything. And when you are small, physically or emotionally, you learn very quickly that whether you are welcome or tolerated. The next I realized is the pressure to grow up quickly. As I reflected, I noticed that how often we expect children to regulate their emotions, which even adults find it hard. We keep telling them, be calm, be mature, don't cry, don't overreact, don't be dramatic. And we call it discipline. We call it preparing them for life. But from a child's perspective, it can sound like this. If I'm slow, I'm wrong. If I'm emotional, I'm difficult. If I need time, I'm a problem. And that pressure, it does not create strength. It only creates tension. It turns curiosity into caution and it turns learning into performance. The next message I received while living as a child is the invisible rules. I realized how many invisible rules are around the world. Be the good child, be the obedient one, be the smart one, don't be difficult. Children are constantly reading signals. When do I get praised? When do I get corrected? When do I get ignored? And very quickly a child can learn if love is conditional or not. Attention must be earned, belonging requires performance. So they start editing themselves because they're just trying to feel secure. The fifth message is the cost of being easy. Some children become very quiet and we call them well-behaved. But sometimes they are not calm, they're just careful. They have learned that speaking up can get them into trouble, that expressing emotions can create discomfort, and that asking questions invites correction. So they stop asking. That child grows into an adult who often overthinks every sentence, feels guilty for taking up space, apologizes unnecessarily, stays silent in any kind of meetings, struggles with boundaries, fears conflict even when they are right. Because somewhere earlier in life they learned that I'm safe when my voice is small. And then there is a myth of a good child. There is an unspoken belief that a good child does not raise the voice, is quiet, performs well. But children, they live inside the environments which they did not choose. A tense home, a strict classroom, comparison, bullying, adult moods which they cannot predict. And yet, we expect them to always be focused, polite, grateful, resilient. But a child, just like us, is a human, not a machine. And when they learn the world is unpredictable, they just become guarded. And then there is a support system. This thing really stayed with me. When a child feels overwhelmed, who do they go to? They certainly don't want to go to somebody who keeps correcting them. They need someone who holds space for them, not somebody who keeps explaining, and someone who listens. Many children, they cope alone. They shut down. They act out. They become perfectionists. Or they become helpers. Or they become invisible. And adults say that is their personality. Another important message which I received is that respect is not optional. When I tried to see the world through a child's eye, one uncomfortable truth stood out. We keep rushing them. Come on, be quick. Why are you so slow? Stop crying. We dismiss their emotions. We hurry their questions and we ignore their learnings. And we oversee their becoming. Many a times we release our frustrations on them just because they cannot push back. Because they cannot retaliate. Because they depend on us and because they have to stay. And that is what makes it serious. A child may not argue, but they are absorbing everything. Every raised tone, every impatient sigh, every moment when anger lands on them because it had no other place to go. They may not respond at that moment, but it definitely gets stored. And what gets stored in childhood is usually expressed in the adulthood. Respect is not something a child needs to earn. They deserve it. Not because they are perfect or they have to be perfect, but because they are as human as all of us and they're developing. And development, it requires protection and safety. Not speed, not pressure, not emotional overflow. And now, why this all matters? This is where it connects back to us. Every adult is a former child. The child who was constantly corrected may fear of making a mistake when they become adult. And the child who was shamed may become an adult who overcontrols. Homes are the place where we shape people. Even the schools are the places where people get shaped. And workplaces, they reveal what was shaped. If we want better environments later in life, we need to create better environments earlier in life. And remember, every adult is someone's environment. This was not about blaming anyone. It was just about noticing what we have been normalizing. Because children, they are living in a system which are created by adults. And they do not have the power to leave. So I believe the least we can do is to see them clearly, to understand before we correct, to pause before we react, and to offer patience, kindness, and compassion as they navigate this world. If this video made you reflect, share it with somebody who may benefit from these messages. And if you want to keep growing with me, click the video on the screen. That is where we continue building this work. I'll see you in the next one.